Hi, everyone, and welcome to Lurking for Legends, a live videocast where we do live reads with amazingly talented authors of all genres. I'm Christy Stratus, historical suspense and historical fantasy author, and my awesome co hosts are epic fantasy author Richard H. Stevens and sci fi author David M. Kelly. Lurking for
Right.
Legends is an interactive broadcast, and we encourage you, all of you, to comment and ask us if you have any questions for our guest, for us, about our works, anything along those lines. So tonight we have a guest with us. Her name is Paige Taylor, and she is a fantasy author. So we're really excited to have her. Welcome, Paige.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Paige.
Hi.
Hi, Paige.
Why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll also ask you what's new. But just tell us a little bit about yourself as an author.
Perfect. So I was born in England, in Boxford. I lived there for about a year before I moved over here. So I've been here for about 15 years now. I've kind of always had an interest in writing and reading. Always written kind of short stories and things like that. Tried writing novels, but started writing without kind of a game plan, what I wanted to do, anything like that. So it took me quite a while to actually settle on an idea. And the only time I really settled on an idea and stuck with it was in eighth grade, which is when I started writing the book, which is now published, which is the first in the trilogy I'm writing, which is the fantasy trilogy. Yeah, there's just a little bit about me, but very big on books, obviously. So
That's fantastic. How many of your trilogy are published so far? Definitely one, but is it more than that?
the first one's published, and I'm kind of hopefully coming to the end, fingers crossed, of everything for book two. So hopefully the end of year, if not couple months or a month,
Nice.
um, soon for book two.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Fantastic. That's great. You have such a nice, light British accent. It's really pretty.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I think now we're just going to talk about like what's going on with all of us and what's new with us. So we will also ask you as well, but let's start with David. I'm picking on you, David.
Oh, please do. Yeah. Catch me off guard like that. So what's going on with me? I have put my second Hyperion Jones story to one side for the moment. Um, it wasn't quite working how I wanted it. And I find for Hyperion Jones, because it's so kind of like ridiculous, I have to be in a certain kind of mood to actually move forward with it.
Yeah.
And there's too much kind of nasty stuff on the news at the moment for me to be in the right kind of frame of mind. So I switched to my um, next novel, which is going to be the first of a new series, um, following on from the Joe Allen and Logan Two Feathers books, but further into the future, but in the same universe. So I've started working on that. I've been doing a lot of world building. I spent most of today doing three-dimensional mathematics, trying to work out the position of a star, uh, which just shows you the kind of stuff that we end up doing.
Yeah, right?
So yeah,
Definitely.
there you go. So that's it.
CJ has a question.
Yes, I'll bring it up here.
What
What
kind
kind
of
of mood do
mood?
you need to be in to write Hyperion? A funny one or a more serious one? I have to be able to kind of like shut things out and just let go, basically. If I'm too preoccupied with serious stuff, it just doesn't flow right, and that's what I found was happening. So I figure, right, okay, better to put it to one side and just start working on something else. It's something I've done before. It's like I find it quite a useful technique to to get make the most out of your time. It's like if you're struggling, don't keep trying to bang your
Mm,
head against the wall. Just
sure.
do something else for a while. And you usually find when you start doing that you actually figure out what the hell's wrong with the other one anyway, and go, oh, that's how I need to do it. So yeah.
That's so true. That's absolutely true. How about you, Richard?
Yeah, I'm
speaking about struggling, I'm still struggling to get through the last book of my tetralogy. It seems we had this discussion, I think, on the last show that people struggle when they get to the third book because it doesn't feel like anything's fresh anymore. So when you first started writing a story, everything's fresh and it's just so much to write about. But after you get into the third and now fourth books, it's almost like you're just plodding along trying to get to the end, and I find it's very sluggish. So I'm about 110,000 words in there. I keep telling my book fans that are waiting for When Legends Rise to come out that it'll be out at the end of the year. Honestly, I don't think it's going to be coming out till January, February because it's still got to be edited and it's not even completed yet. So hopefully I'll have it out. I'll definitely have it out by the next book signing season, but it won't be out before Christmas. But other than that, I've got so many story arcs. That's the problem with epic fantasy too, and that's what makes epic fantasy tomes so big, is they generally have more than one story arc. And as you get into 4 books, you've got so many different characters that kind of branch out. So you've got more than one main character, and they all have their own story. So it's almost like you're writing several books at once, and trying to get all those story arcs to come back together and meld when you get to the climactic scene of the 4-book series is a bit of a challenge as well. So it's coming along. No, pieces are starting to come into place now, and I'm starting to feel very comfortable. Whereas 2 months ago, I had no idea where a few of the story arcs are going. I've written them. My characters tell my story for me.
Yeah.
And sometimes they paint themselves in the corner, and I don't know how to get them out without getting paint on their feet. But I think I've got them all figured out now. So I'm just going to look in the comments here, Paige. So there's a question here for you, Paige. And hopefully I'm not missing any questions here. Paige, are you writing faster or slower than before? And where do you think you've improved most?
That's hard. I think now that I've kind of gotten a larger vocabulary and I've kind of gotten more into kind of the flow of the writing and the story and the characters, I think I can definitely write a bit faster. That's for sure. Whereas before, kind of writing when I would get stuck quite a lot, I can now, as long as I'm in the right mindset, I can just it just flows. Right now, I'm kind of stuck with where I am. But once I get out of that, I'll definitely be able to write a bit faster than before.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think that's probably also where I've kind of improved most, is definitely just the writing aspect itself, like the vocabulary, definitely the punctuation and everything. Going through that, if I went through the first draft of my first book, I could probably do that a lot better now, which is great because it's definitely changed a lot. So kind of just anything with the vocabulary and the writing itself is definitely where I've improved.
Yeah, for sure. That's the joys of working with an editor, is the editor will help you start tightening your book. They work with you and you'll start remembering things that they told you, and you'll start cutting out things and doing things the way the editor wants you to do them. And sorry, Christy, we didn't get into what's going on in the Christy stratosphere. So before we take another question, why don't you let us know what's going on with you?
Sure, yeah. I'm publishing and writing Prohibited Magic, as always. That is the 3rd book in the Grimoire Society of Dark Acts series. So that is publishing to Kindle Vella as we speak, once a week. There's a new episode every Monday. So I've been really enjoying that. I am with Paige. I am slightly unsure of what I'm doing in this, not what I'm doing in this episode. I'm at the end of it. And I don't know what my characters want. I'm pretty sure it's just that I'm not listening because I don't want what they want. So I think that I just need to do what they're telling me to do. It never works out. Like, Richard, you were saying, you have to listen to them. They really tell the story. And whenever I resist, it doesn't work, and it creates a block for me. So I started in that direction, and it's, again, it's not what I was planning, but this is what always happens. It's every time. And it happens in a lot of different episodes. So I think I'm writing episode 18 now. And it's going along smoothly. I still feel, this is what happens for me sometimes while I'm writing a novel. Sometimes it'll feel like I'm still at the beginning until I'm almost at the end. Like I have a long way to go. And then suddenly it's like almost over. And I'm surprised. And a lot of times the over takes longer than I think too. So, anyway, that's how it's feeling to me. I think I have over 40,000 words now. So, I'm probably like halfway through or something. I definitely have a lot more to do yet. So, I've been enjoying it. I've been really enjoying it. it's been a lot of fun. So this is definitely like the farther I get into it, the more absolutely certain I am that it'll be at least 4 or 5 books. So that's nice too, to kind of know where I'm headed. So I think that's about all that's new with me.
That's awesome. I'm just going to field a couple more questions. These libraries take quite a while. We generally don't do a lot of questions here, but I want to get to them. So, and I'm going to try and do this. My question, I'm going to sum up my answer pretty quickly. But so Wendy's asking, to all the panelists, I can't wrap my mind around fantasy writing. How would you recommend one start? Simply by suspending belief? Yeah, I guess you can suspend belief. I think with fantasy, with anything, you have to have some realism in fantasy. Otherwise, in my mind, it doesn't work. Like if like I watched The Hobbit, and these trolls were in this mine and they were fighting, and one hobbit or one troll or dwarf fell about 100 feet onto a railway track, and he just bounced up and started walking around again. And that's not realistic. It's fantasy. You have magic stuff like that, but there has to be some realism in there. So if someone's going to fall 100 feet, they're going to die. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Or otherwise, what's the point of writing a story? But as far as me writing a story in fantasy, I just dream up a main character, give him an eclectic trait, kick him out the front door, and I view the world through his eyes. And that's how I build my world, and that's how my stories evolve. So my concept of writing fantasy is not very complicated at all. I just watch my book unfold through my characters' eyes, and they take me where they want to take me. And sometimes, like you say, Christy, it's all of a sudden they're taking you somewhere you really don't want them to take you, and you don't know how to get back out of it. So anyway, that's my answer to that. How about you guys?
Yeah, well, I write historical fantasy. So for me, I start with an actual location, or sometimes I make up a location, but with the current series that I'm writing, I'm starting with 1850 Boston. So I have like real world locations and, the types of buildings, all that stuff already laid out for me, which is really nice, and I like the aspect of epic fantasy, regular epic fantasy and things like that, where you can just make stuff up in that respect and come up with the way things look yourself. But, if you're having trouble with that, you can do some other form of fantasy like historical fantasy, and have the world kind of set out for you. And then the rest is really the magic. That's mostly what I'm building. And that system kind of builds itself as I write. And then, like I would just advise, don't be afraid to let your creativity flow. And then by the time you get to the end of the book, you can kind of figure out, what are the rules that I have either broken or that I need to put in place, and go back and edit for that. But, I would leave myself open for all those fantastical elements to just come out on their own.
I think it must be in your end there, Wendy. The feed seems good for all of us. And here's another comment saying the feed's all good here. So yeah, that's great. And I think it'd be interesting to get Paige's point of view, because being new on the author scene and being a new fantasy author, how would you answer that question in a nutshell?
I think it's hard. I really struggle with starting a story. Once I get on the right track, I'm fine. But starting off, I really struggle with, okay, what's going to be the plot and everything without it kind of being cliche or something that's already overused. So I definitely bring up my characters first, figure out all my characters, what they look like, everything like that. That of course might change when I start the story, as it did for this one. And then I kind of start world building, just so I have a feel for what's going on. And then usually the story kind of just comes to me from there. Sometimes I kind of play around with a couple of scenes with the characters and see kind of what that's like and what fits for their story. But I think sometimes it just comes to you as you start building everything else.
You're not one of those plotters, are you? We would have known here. We invited you on our show.
A little bit.
That's awesome. I wish I could plot, because it certainly makes things a lot easier for sure. How about you, Dave? I know you write science fiction, but science fiction is really a futuristic fantasy. So how do you go?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like I can't answer that because I don't write fantasy, but
I think all science fiction is fantasy, really, until it comes true.
I know that's a cop out. For me, basically, it's all about the situation that the characters are in. So I kind of like start off with the situation, and start off. I usually have a fairly good idea of how the story is going to start. And I usually have a reasonably good idea of how it's going to finish. And I start writing and basically kind of find my way through it and see which way the characters move as I tell it. I'm kind of recording the events. So that's kind of like how I do it. It's like I don't plan very much at all. I mean, sometimes you have to, but most of my planning is done kind of like on the fly, which sometimes makes it very slow. But I find if I try and plan too much, it just doesn't work for me. I don't know. It's kind of a bit like eating sort of like, once chewing gum. It's like all the flavor's gone.
Yeah, I find as you write as a pantser that a lot of the plot starts unfolding, and then you can start. You're thinking about it, and you're actually plotting in your mind. You're not even realizing you're doing it. It's just it's not. We're not actually plotting. We're not writing stuff down and then following a scene or a schematic. But it's coming, and as the more you get into your book, the more the plot unfolds, and the more you think about it before you even get to it. So, I think in the back of most of us, there is a bit of a plotter in there. It's just we do it in different ways, and every author does everything differently. So,
yeah, for sure.
And there's just one question here that's from David. Some of the green themes, or I don't know what that means. So, how do any of you feel you develop writing fantasy with green themes? I have no idea what you're talking about, David. So, I'm not sure if anyone else can elaborate on that.
I'm not sure. I'm sure we'll all say, "Oh, of course," when he explains.
I don't have green themes as such in my books, but my books are kind of like set in the future where the environment has been pretty much destroyed on Earth. So,
if that's what it means. And how about that question there, Paige? How do you feel about? Does you still feel the same way about writing romantic themes in your books?
I did talk to David about this. David helped me editing and reading through all of my books so far, except for book 3. That one's not done yet, but I know I did definitely say to David that at the beginning, and I put it off for as long as I could because I was really uncomfortable writing it. It's just like not my thing. Like I'm a fantasy girl. I don't really read romance. Rom-coms are okay, but I feel that it's definitely something that adds to the plot, as long as it doesn't take over. I mean, in certain cases, not always, but I feel that for the age group I'm writing for, it could be nice to add it. I feel like it's just kind of, people will like that, if that makes sense. As long as it's not taking over the point of the story.
Right.
So in a way, I guess I don't really feel the same way. It still makes me a little nervous to write. It's not my favorite thing to do, but I don't feel completely against it anymore. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
David here is saying that the green themes are environmental themes. So I think that to answer that question, David, I think for most of us is, at least for me especially, is I do not sit down to write a book with a topic in mind like green themes or what's going on with the world or racism or something like that. Like I try to write my characters realistically so that they might encounter green themes, they might encounter racism, they might encounter anything that you and I might encounter as we walk down the street on our daily lives. And I want to make my characters so relatable that I don't want to sit there and preach about any topic. I want my characters just to be living a life, and all these things that we experience as human beings will naturally come into the story and go out of the story. But the story is about the characters and what they're going through, and if they're going through green theme type stuff, then it comes into the thing or whatever. But I personally don't sit down to write a book on certain themes. I try to make my characters relatable to everyday life. I'm not sure how you guys feel about that stuff, but
Yeah, with green themes, it's so funny because I was thinking that must be what it is, and then I thought it's
Yeah,
too
me
easy.
too.
It must be something else. It can't be. So, I don't really have that in my books. They all take place in the Victorian era, when there was a
Mm.
lot more environment and everything was a lot healthier. Um, so I don't really have anything like that going on. I do mention flowers and their symbolism and use them as symbolic elements, but I don't really have any green themes. There are other, themes that, as Richard said, like if they come up in the story, that might enter into it. Like in my current historical fantasy series, we have the theme of prejudice against the Irish. And that's not something that takes over the book, but it is an important thing because it's 1850 Boston,
Mhm.
and that was
Everyday life thing.
huge. Yeah, it was huge. So I do deal with relevant themes they're relevant to the time period and they're relevant to the story. And it just so happens that I'm not really needing to deal with like a green type of thing for my work right now.
Hmm. Okay, here's something from Jennifer Schlag. Hello, everyone. I feel Paige on the romantic scenes. I've had a hard time writing them. It's very hard for me to write the intimate scenes between characters, especially. And people ask me, what are my books about? What do they have in them? And I always tell them that if you're expecting Sarah J. Maas, then you do not want to read my books because I do not write that way. I would probably sell more books if I did because that seems to be the way things are going right now. If you want to write to market, write spicy fantasy. But that is not what I enjoy writing, and I would make it sound so cheesy that you would you would was it DNF did not finish that book, so I don't do that. I want to write what I'm comfortable with writing, and I just write epic fantasy like Lord of the Rings. I tell me Lord of the Rings, Sword of Shannara, that type of theme. Those are my books. If you want something spicy, then you don't want my books. But we all have our own comfort zone, so I think as authors, we're all individual and we're all unique, and we all have our own voice. So. Anyway,
Yeah.
I think we're starting to get going on a bit too long here, and I'm conscious that Paige has other commitments, so I think we should jump into our stories now, and we're going to start with Paige's book, I believe. That's what we decided
I
on.
think that's what.
Okay, Paige,
Okay.
so if you want to give us a bit of a rundown, a synopsis on your stuff, and if anyone has any things that they want to put on, I apologize ahead of time right now to the viewers because I think I'm going to have a wardrobe malfunction throughout Paige's thing because I'm playing more than one character, and I think some of my costumes are going to clash, but I will try to get this done. So you go ahead, Paige, and I'll be back with you in just 1 second. Yeah, see, Dave's signing off too, so you can't see him get dressed.
Perfect. So this is a scene, I believe it's chapter 3 from my first book, the first one in the Bloodblade trilogy, which is Secrets Wrought in Blood. So this is the scene where the main characters, Talia and Killian, are returning from a trip into the forest outside their kingdom, which is called the Forest of Undying Souls, or the Undying Forest. So basically, they've had some problems with the trolls that are living in the forest, who've been trying to breach their kingdom's borders. And they go out to find a scout, but what they find is a lot worse than just the scout. So this is them returning from that with their newfound discovery.
Cool. I am
Yeah.
the main character, which is very
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
Excellent. And I'll just say, since we're waiting for the other two guys, David, on your comment, he says, I find romance is easier to write in a Victorian setting. You're so right. And it kind of lends itself to that for sure. Thanks, Richard, popping in there. Ooh, nice crown. Yeah, I totally agree with you, David. And it's something I've been considering, actually. So it's kind of cool that you mentioned that. Historical settings, to me, really lend themselves to romance. And they're a lot of fun to write it into. Things are so different. The etiquette was so different. The dating was so different. Oh, Richard, you look beautiful.
I hope I have. I probably don't have the right hair color, but that's the only long hair I had.
Gotta love it.
I like it.
It's hard growing it this quick.
Oh my goodness. Love it.
I'm being biased against everybody else has got long hair.
You got a crown.
Yeah.
That's better.
Perfect.
CJ says he chopped my hair earlier. Oh my goodness.
Okay, so did you actually read the scene synopsis there, Paige? Sorry, I was.
I did, yeah. I think I did forget to mention though. I get very nervous when I do everything, and I forget to mention things. But what they find is actually, probably mention this because it is very important. But it's called a rakai, so it's not seen since the war, which was many years ago. And basically, they think that their leader is dead. So it's kind of a very disturbing discovery. But I just wanted to add that in there, just because it was a very important detail that I missed. So, yeah, we're good.
No worries. No need to be nervous. This is just like a fireside chat. So whenever you're ready, Paige, I believe you're the narrator, so you can take it away and we'll all jump in.
Perfect. Okay. So this is chapter 3 and it's narrated by Talia. The majority of the ride back to Listhrane is spent in silence, leaving both Killian and me alone with our thoughts. When I can no longer stand it, I speak, shattering the fragile silence.
Do you believe they're working with the trolls?
Killian does not answer, and for a moment, the soundless ride is taken up once more.
It would seem as though they are. I dare not think of why, for I fear their reasons.
Killian halts, and I pull lightly on the reins, following suit.
May I borrow your cloak?
Without hesitation, I lift my hand from the reins and pull my cloak from Alwyn's back. The hood tucked carefully beneath the saddle to keep it from falling. It is of a dark grey colour, yet when the light hits it properly, hints of blue are visible. I lean over, passing it to Killian.
Thank you.
He spreads my cloak across the rakai, shielding its body from the curious eyes of Listhrane citizens.
We do not wish to provoke fear. It is best if we keep it hidden for now.
We resume our pace, now nearing Listhrane's borders. The rakai's growls are now muffled, almost inaudible. A flicker of light breaks through the trees not far ahead, and seconds later we depart the Undying Forest. The ground changes from the rugged, roots-walled forest floor to bright green grass. Sunlight warms my face, making up for the light lost within the thick wood, yet the sky darkens with the inevitable night. I tap Alwyn's side gently, following behind Killian on the cobblestone bridge. He is met with 2 guards who flank either side of the falls. They bow in acknowledgement, quickly motioning for the opening of Listhrane's waterfall. Killian bows his head in appreciation, watching as the water splits apart, making way for our entry. I bring Owen to a stop when we are clear of the cascading waters, and I slide my hands along the reins, loosening them. Carefully, I slip to the ground.
Do you wish me to take your horse for you?
I lift my head, my gaze settling on the young elf before me. With unique grey eyes and sharp, pointed features, he looks to be around my age.
I am on my way to fulfill my nightly duties. If you wish me to take your horse to the stables on the way, it would be my pleasure.
His tone is light, and a smile plays on his lips. I bow my head, holding the reins out toward him.
I would appreciate that.
The guard takes them from me, lowering himself into a bow. When he straightens his posture, I notice that his smile does not falter. And without another word, he leads Olwen down the narrow path. Killian's gaze trails the elf as he departs, an air of hatred about the way he stares. His hands are clasped tensely around Elwis's reins.
I'm told my father is in the throne room,
he says after a moment, his eyebrows arched in distaste toward the elf, who has now disappeared around the bend. I bow my head, following him over the bridge before us. We steer away from the edges, but either side leads to a plummeting drop and darkness below. The track is barely wide enough for a horse, yet Killian has no trouble leading Elwis into the throne room. We turn right down a connecting stone pathway. Ahead, a towering empty doorway reveals a chamber, and we step inside. Stone walls encase the room, which is curved into a half circle. Thin, vibrant vines trail down the walls, scattered with shimmering flowers, almost glowing in the darkness. Aerolus and the main inhabitants. On either side, long golden banners draped on the imposing stone walls. In the center of each is an aerolus, sewn into the fabric. Vines coated in thorns climb over their crystallized petals. Opposite us, there is a dais. Atop it rests a throne made of spotless stone. Twisted, dark green vines curl around the edges. Upon the throne is Killian's father, Arundel Witheron, the king of Listhrane. He wears a rope of silver chalice that drags at the back as he walks, embroidered with small details of gold and white, and the sleeves gap open at their cuffs. His pale blonde hair falls slightly longer than Killian's. I lower my head, dropping into a bow. I stare at the shiny stone floor beneath me.
Did you find the scout?
Arundel asks. Straightening my posture, I bring my eyes to the king. Resentment coils in my stomach, yet I force myself to remain composed. The king has never been fond of me, and although I cannot discern his exact reason, I believe it may be due to my relationship with Killian. It does not go unnoticed that a prince and a commoner are best friends. Yet I do not understand, for I am loyal. I serve Arundel as I must and do what I can for my kingdom. He finds a right to reprimand me whenever he has a chance, to disapprove of my accomplishments and chide my words, my actions. Despite Arangel's loathing towards me, it does not bother me, for I return the same feelings. It has been a long time since I've trusted this man, if ever.
Indeed.
Killian, his face a wall of stone, looks his father in the eye.
He was not alone, Father. There was no longer a mere rivalry with the trolls. There was more of this.
Is that so?
His cold, crystal eyes are upon his son. Killian shifts his head, bringing his attention to me. His message is clear. I withdraw my dagger, moving to Elvis's side. I slide my cloak off the beast. Immediately, it stirs, body jolting violently as it tries to break free of its ties. Gripping its armor, I drag it off Elvis. Growling, it tries to wrestle at my grasp, but halts when I bring my dagger to its neck. It grows silent. Forcing it forward, I stop in the center of the room. For a moment, Arundel remains still, no trace of emotion in his rigid posture. Then, his eyes flare with something unidentifiable, and he brings himself to stand, his gaze not leaving the Rakai as he treads slowly from the dais.
We tracked the troll to a small clearing and met with a pack of Rakai.
Killian pauses, choosing his words carefully.
They had been studying our defenses, preparing to breach our borders. An alliance had been formed. We killed all but one.
Remove the rack.
I do as the king says. Slitting the rag with my dagger, I let it fall to the ground. A low growl escapes the Rakai's lips, and it strains against my grasp. I press the edge of my blade into the beast's neck.
Tell us what you know,
Says Arundel, haunted before the Rakai. He bends over with piercing eyes. A harsh cackle escapes from the Rakai, and his ashen lips curving to a sneer.
I will tell you nothing.
Arundel straightens his back and tilts his head, his blonde hair falling to the side.
I doubt that.
Arandel's eyes flicker to me. I know what he expects of me. I force the Rakai to its knees, angling my dagger to tilt its chin upwards. A trickle of dark blood runs down its throat. The Rakai coughs, its near vanquished.
We are working alongside the trolls on the terms of our agreement.
The king turns, striding back to his throne, his hands clasped behind his back in thought.
What terms?
He asks, rotating away from the dais. Rakai hesitates, but makes a hasty decision.
We shall breach your borders, trolls at our side. It will not take us long to get what we seek.
Its lips twist, resuming its vile smirk.
The trolls shall take your filthy elven kingdom, and we shall reclaim what is rightfully ours.
And you believe my kingdom has what you seek?
Asks Arundel, his eyebrows lifted. The Rakai cackles.
I know you do. We have searched for too long. Word has slipped of its location.
The Rakai leans forward, split flying from its mouth.
You know exactly what I speak of.
It growls.
You have lived a peaceful life since the war, and when my kind comes, you will forget the meaning of mercy.
Arandel's eyes flicker with rage, yet his body tenses.
The world you know will be long forgotten. Your once flourishing flowers shall wither and die. Darkness will spread like wildfire. The rulers of these lands will fall. There's only one who may rule these lands. Your time will come, and when it does, you will be the one to fall.
And then we're at the next chapter, which is again narrated by Talia. I maintain my composure. Despite the Rakai's troubling words, the world has burned before. A widespread war across the lands, but the darkness has lifted, shattered by those who serve the light. If the beast's words are true, then I cannot say victory will be taken by those opposing Cinder once more.
Kill it.
Arandel's voice is dull, emotionless, but he is rigid, eyes cold with something larger than hatred. The blade of my dagger is still pressed tightly against the neck of the Rakai, yet through my anger and ease, there is hesitation.
Did you hear me, girl?
I lift my chin, hardening my stare as his icy blue eyes lock on mine. He tilts his head.
I mean no disrespect, but you do not believe there is more the beast can tell us?
You dare disobey me?
I dare not disobey you, my king, but I believe there is more to be told.
Aranjul's eyes flare with concealed anger.
Kill it! Otherwise, I shall change my mind about this conversation, and I doubt you wish to face the consequences.
I grip my teeth, releasing a slow breath. I suppress my rising anger.
As I thought.
Without another word, Aranjul whirls, striding past his throne. He disappears through an arch, footsteps fading from earshot. I keep my eyes trained on the ground where he had stood only moments ago, my anger seething. I force myself to take slow, deep breaths in order to steady myself, to calm the rage boiling inside of me. Straightening my posture, I move swiftly, sliding my blade across the Rakai's neck. There is a faint gurgling noise, then silence. I let the body drop to the ground. Without a word, I sheath my dagger and turn for the bridge, ignoring Killian, who stands in silence. He is expressionless, gaze cast on the stone floor, hands clasped tightly behind his back, his knuckles are a ghostly white. I make for the bridge but hesitate and stand, wavering at the edge of the throne room. My thoughts wander to how a situation may have been different, if only we knew everything that could have been told. And yet, how could he have sorted the truth from the lies? I will my thoughts disperse. There is no point mulling over what may have been. I stride from the room, following past my sleeping quarters. My mind wanders from the blurring past before me, trying to convince my heart that the Rakai said cannot be true. The darkness had vanished, and the battle had been won. Or has the battle only begun?
The king wishes to speak with you.
I stop mid-stride, dragged back to true reality by the authoritative voice. I turn around, my long hair swaying, a symbol of confidence, which I am much in need of. The guard bows his head, and for a moment, his gaze lingers on the ground. When he lifts his head, his eyes are all on mine. My outrage threatens to grow.
As he wishes,
I say, bowing my head. Despite my displeasure, I would be a fool to refuse the king's order. The guard trails his finger about the hilt of his dagger, and with a half nod, he turns, his grey-blue cloak swishing as he moves past me, back towards the throne room. I follow the sentry across the narrow path, padding quietly. Despite my fear and swell of emotions, I keep my chin held high, striding with an undertone of confidence. I will not act deterred.
Talia?
My eyes settle on Killian. He has departed the throne room, making his way toward me. The sentry bows as he passes, yet Killian does not acknowledge his gesture, his gaze locked firmly on mine. He stops before me, bold enough to block my way.
Is everything all right?
your father has summoned me.
His brows furrow, a question in his eyes.
I'm sure it is nothing.
I add, laying a reassuring hand on his shoulder. I force a smile to curve my lips.
I will see you later.
His lips part, yet I give him no time to form the words. Moving past him, I follow the guard. And that's chapter 3 and 4.
Hey, good one.
Hey.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you. And thank you for reading it with me.
You're welcome. We enjoyed doing
Of course. Yeah, that was great.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed that.
So
book 1 is out and book 2 is in the works, right?
It is, yep.
Great.
Oh, we got some questions coming in here, or some comments anyway.
She is very
Thanks,
stern.
everyone. I'm super stern, you know.
Yeah, she's
Don't mess with
always
me.
whipping us and keeping us in our places.
Chris is always like that. Yeah, I used to see her behind the scenes.
Oh
That's why Dave and I have very short hair. Anyway,
my goodness.
Before we set up Christie's, can you let everybody know where they can find your books, Paige? Are they just on Amazon? Do you have a website? Are they elsewhere? Are you wide? Where can we get them?
So they're on Amazon, which obviously goes anywhere. But then if you are in Bracebridge, Kingston, or Gravenhurst, there are a few stores there. So Kingston, it's in Novel Ideas and Bookland. Gravenhurst is actually in the Muskoka Surf and Turf, which is the surf and turf place. I have a few in there. And then there are a few stores in Bracebridge. There's Unique Muskoka. And then it's in all of the Minds Alive toy stores. It's also, you can get it to the Amazon link via my website. But if you wish to contact me and see if you can get a copy, you can always go to my TikTok or Instagram or any of my social media. and I can
What's
find
the
a way.
website?
It's pagetaylor.ca.
www.pagetaylor.ca.
Yep.
Let me type that in there.
Oh, thank
I
you.
shall have to disappear for a moment.
What's that?
I'll have to disappear again for a moment.
pagetaylor.com.
.ca.
.ca.
Yeah.
All right. Hopefully this will come through.
Thank you.
Before, when we had an expanded version here, that other Dave and Christy were the ones looking after this, but they were a lot better at it.
That came out fun. Cedar Canoe Bookshop in Huntsville, Caroline Taylor says.
Yes, Cedar Canoe as well. Sorry, I always lose track. Thank you. Yes.
Now a visual for the Rakai.
Right.
I got, yeah. I was trying to think, how am I going to look like a Rakai? I have no idea what a Rakai looks like, but it's kind of beast-like. So. And David said, I will read Paige's work with voices from now on. All right, Christy, I don't know. I'm probably going to have the wrong type of hat for your character, but this is the only tall hat that I could find. And so you're this rat.
I'm sure it's fine.
Is going to be he's going to look like a real flashy rat. Sorry, I'm leaning over. I got one screen in front of the other, and I'm trying to get your thing to the top. There we are. You go ahead, Christy,
So
if you want to set us up.
Perfect. Okay, so what we're going to be reading is the first episode from Prohibited Magic, and that's the third novel in the Grimoire Society of Dark Acts series. So 3 books is all there is so far. I'm currently writing the third one, and it's publishing on Kindle Vella, as I said earlier. So at the end of book 2, which was called Corrupted Magic, we had the character Carmichael, who was in this place called the Restricted Order, and that's where prohibited magic users can be hired for a high price. So the Restricted Order was in chaos because 2 ruin rats, villainous magical gang members, were stealing magical artifacts and using others' magic against them. They also destroyed the entire floor in the second story room where Carmichael found them floating in midair, and they had injured a lot of fellow magicals. So Carmichael tried to bargain with the ruin rats. He lied that he wanted to join their gang in an attempt to infiltrate them. He's one of the magic books that they would want. So he used that as a bargaining chip. And he said if they took him with them to their lair, he'd give them that magical book I just mentioned called the Book of Blessings he has in his pocket. And that one actually belongs to someone else. So it's really not his property to be messing with. The 2 ruin rats challenged him to prove himself by jumping toward them off the high second story with no guarantee of being saved and only the chance that they might transport him with them back to their hideout. So he jumps toward them and he came up short, didn't make it all the way. And they waited until the very last second before he hit the first floor below to transport all 3 of them away. And we pick up right there, right after they've transported him away. So when everybody is ready. Oh, perfect. Yes. I love it. I love it, David. David is playing, I believe he's playing Carmichael, right? Yeah, I didn't typecast you, David. We always end up with David
before. What do you mean? I've been Carmichael before.
He's done Carmichael before. Carmichael is very stuffy and uppity, very refined.
Indeed.
You look fantastic. The ruin rats actually have, or a couple of them have, what's called soap blocks. So you did a pretty good job with that. There are these curled hairs that come just down here. It's really unattractive. I didn't realize. So, I love the costumes. Okay, so we're going to start with chapter 1 of Prohibited Magic.
Malfunction.
What was that? Oh, you have
mustache malfunction.
Well, we can't go on without that. The show cannot continue. So,
I can't do this without a mirror.
The story takes place in Boston in the year 1850. And We're from Carmichael's perspective, so I'm going to read the narration and everybody else is going to do voices. It's a beautiful hat.
It doesn't fit my head.
Is it silver?
It's plasticky, sparkly. We did a dance.
Nice.
My wife and I did a dance
Yeah.
right on the stage in front of a bunch of people, and we had to wear these hats. My false tooth keeps falling out.
I think that's brilliant. That's okay. Oh, that's cool. There he is. He's missing a tooth. See, he's a villainous gang member. I love it.
Yep.
All right, here we go. In the blink of an eye, Carmichael was no longer free falling to the first floor of the restricted order. Instead, he and the two thieving ruin rats landed on their feet on the uneven stone ground of what he immediately recognized as an alley in a bad area. The kind that always seemed dark, no matter how brightly the sun shone, even at this time in the morning. His eyes flew around to adult-looking children whose ages ranged from approximately 9 to 13. Their faces and hands were smudged with dirt, their stances wide as gang members, but their clothes weren't in the worst shape, as if they had a benefactor. None of them looked surprised by this sudden appearance in their territory with two haughty ruin rats. In fact, the kids started to draw closer around Carmichael, exchanging indecipherable whispers as they moved toward him. Anyone who knew anything about back alleys and bad areas knew that street children were nothing to sneeze at, especially in a large group. Carmichael counted 8 of them. Any one of them, or all of them, could be carrying knives and know how to use them by this age. Knox had always encouraged Carmichael to carry a dagger at all times, just in case. Knox even had a tailor reinforce his jacket pockets with leather for that purpose. Carmichael hadn't listened, and now he couldn't even scare them off with a weapon. Most disturbing, though, was that these children were not shocked by magic. Not a good sign. Carmichael straightened and held his head high to look down his nose. He put his hand in his inner jacket pocket and acted as if he might be resettling a dagger inside it. It caused them to pause their approach, at least, their eyes all drawn to the two ruin rats for further instructions. They were the benefactors. Clever, recruiting kids. The question was, in what capacity?
Where have you dumped us?
Carmichael sneered at the children and held his ground. The hook-nosed gang member with nothing in his hands turned suddenly and smashed his fist into Carmichael's stomach, bending him over in intense pain. The wind rushed out of his lungs and he scowled when he heard the kids react in awe and excitement.
Cover his eyes,
the ruin rat instructed. The children surged forward with their own high-pitched versions of war cries, and despite the pain and his restricted breathing, Carmichael managed to shove a couple of them away, one into a wall and another to the ground. By the time he had his hands on a third kid, 3 younger ones had started climbing his sides and back, trying to fell him by their weight alone. The heels of their shoes ground into his legs, and their fingers dug into his skin through his clothes. He let go of the child in his hands and aimed his back at the wall, stumbling backward deliberately, crushing the kid on his back, who fell off with a grunt. The other 2 held tight to his sides, trying to reach his neck. He grabbed the kid's hair on the right side and pulled, but the boy was tenacious and only let out a shout in Carmichael's ear. He turned to push the other on his left side into the wall, but 2 more quickly started tying his knees together with rope, throwing his balance as they pulled hard to tighten it. He almost fell, but managed to remain standing, spreading his feet far apart, despite his knees being cinched. The 2 clinging to his sides both reached their arms around his neck and let their bodies swing behind him in a concerted effort. Their combined weight and his inability to widen his stance for balance immediately felled him, his hard landing broken only by them hitting the ground first behind him, yelling shrilly on impact. Quickly, children piled on top of his chest and stomach, keeping him in place while another one he hadn't seen come up behind him covered his eyes with a long, thick cloth that clung tightly to his brow and hung loosely past his nose. Someone yanked his head up off the ground, and Carmichael swung his fists wildly, hitting kids on him, around him, even the one behind him, but he still felt the blindfold knot at the back of his head, pulling hairs as the knot was secured. The rough material scraped against the scratches on his right cheek that the black slime had left when it had attacked him like the nails of a human hand. The next thing he knew, his arms were pinned under their feet, and he had been immobilized.
I ordered you to help, you fools.
He shouted at the ruin rats as he felt multiple hands work to control his arms while they bound his wrists in front of his body with rough rope.
Gag him?
A young-sounding voice asked.
Nah, let him blather.
It sounded like the ruin rat with all the magical artifacts in his arms, the clean-shaven one. He had less of a deep voice than the other. Carmichael's face heated with embarrassment at having been bested by a gang of children due to his lack of magic and weaponry. It all felt a bit Gulliver's Travels, but at least 8 against 1 was somewhat respectable.
A nickel for each of you.
Carmichael felt hands and bodies leave him, allowing him to recover his breath, and heard the sound of shoes on stone, probably gathering around their benefactor.
40 cents total is what all that effort was worth?
Carmichael struggled against his restraints.
These children know their knots too well, the perils of growing up on the streets. I could pay you each $100 to let me go.
Both ruin rats laughed.
Get him to his feet and untie his legs, but watch yourself.
Getting children to do a man's work?
Carmichael felt the kids pull up his upper body first. The rope around his knees loosened and then disappeared before they pushed and pulled him to standing. There wasn't any point in kicking out at a bunch of children when his hands were already bound and his eyes blinded by the cloth. It wouldn't accomplish anything, except perhaps to make his attackers angrier. And now that he was at their mercy, that wasn't the brightest idea. He found his feet unsteadily, having no sense of balance without his sight. To the kids, he said,
Don't you wonder why they didn't do this themselves? Are they weaker than you are, these 2 grown men? Can't you see they're using you?
Keep up this kind of good work and you'll become one of us.
It was the voice of the ruin rat with the magical artifacts who was completely ignoring everything Carmichael said. One of the gang members must have shown the children something magical because there were sounds of all around.
Now get lost and keep your mouth shut.
He heard the kids run off out of the alley. One of them kicked him in the shin along the way for good measure.
Ow! You'll never get out of the gutter if you keep rolling in it.
More laughing from the ruin rats before he felt one of them reach into his pants pocket and retrieve the Book of Blessings.
I said I'd help you work with that book.
You also said if we took you with us, you'd give it to us.
The ruin rat's voice sounded distant, and Carmichael was too distraught thinking he might be left here, tied up and defenseless, left to equally dangerous non-magical prey, to realize which one was speaking.
Just helping you keep your end of the bargain.
Carmichael tried to calm himself. He knew better than to show fear to these kinds of scoundrels. That would only make them respect him less. He focused instead on keeping his balance while his eyes remained covered, something a trifle harder than he'd first assumed. Even hearing the footsteps making their way farther from him, he said nothing, kept his fears to himself. He would bluff them all the way, even if it meant he was left on his own. His hands were yanked forward.
Come on, and try not to be too much of a nuisance.
At first, Carmichael tried to keep track of the turns they were taking, but after quite a number, it became confusing.
Are they leading me through the streets? It can't be. Someone would have stopped them by now. Unless we're in an area bad enough that the police don't often venture into it. Then no one else will stop them, since they're gang members and...
Carmichael brushed against something solid on his right side, something tall and rounded. He recognized it immediately as a barrel, which meant they were still in the network of back alleys. The very distinct scent of baked goods met his nose, for the second time.
These rascals are dragging me in circles, thinking they can trick me. If only I knew where we'd started out, I might know where we are now.
A startling thought occurred to him.
What if we're not in Boston anymore? They could have transported us anywhere.
Goosebumps prickled his skin all over his body. If he was no longer in the city, could Knox find him? Both Carmichael and Knox knew much of Boston by heart, but other areas... His hands tugged forward.
Stop dawdling.
Carmichael had had enough. Perhaps it was time to start acting in a way they would have no choice but to respect.
Hurry it up already. I know you're taking me in circles to try and confuse me, Are you stupid enough to underestimate me as severely as that?
The rope around his wrists was released.
Don't. He'll be useful.
What had the other ruin rat been about to do? The rope was taken up again and yanked forward, only to stop in a few more steps. A flash of red magic broke through the dark cloth as they were finally transported to their ultimate destination. Hopefully.
If they were going to magically transport us, why did they leave me around like that? Did they truly think a simple cloth would block out the sight of a blast of magic? Perhaps they're dangerous, but not so bright.
Suddenly, the cloth was ripped off his head, taking a few hairs with it. Carmichael winced but stayed silent. The distinct scent of soap floated to his nose as he observed what appeared to be a small windowless concrete room lit only by oil lamps and lined by wooden barrels and crates, with absolutely nothing else to define what building they were in. He tried hard to discern whether there was any underlying scent and found one: salt water. This had to be a bathhouse. No other place smelled like a combination of soap and salt water. Hands pushed him hard from behind and caught him off guard. Carmichael fell forward, using his forearms to catch him on the unforgiving concrete. Pain shot up his arms. A hand grabbed him roughly by the back of his jacket and another by his pant leg and flipped him over. The hook-nosed ruin rat used a throwing star to cut the rope around his wrists. He brandished the dirty but sharp silver star in front of Carmichael's face before pocketing it inside his jacket.
Translation: don't run unless you want to get hit by this.
Get up.
As Carmichael stood, he noticed the other gang member was missing. He must have gone off into another room. Straightening to his full height, the remaining man was at least a head shorter than Carmichael.
I don't think you quite grasped what I meant when I said perhaps we're on the same side back at the restricted order.
The ruin rat took a step back and looked Carmichael up and down.
I can't make up my mind about you.
He rubbed one of his long sideburns, clearly feeling Carmichael was no threat by the way he left himself exposed.
You're either a bang-up who fell out of your family's good graces, or a well-dressed, ill-moneyed gutter rat putting on airs.
I wouldn't be upset if everyone stopped calling me different words for dandy.
Carmichael brushed off his dirtied suit, his fingers bumping along the cut in the right arm of his jacket and shirt sleeve, where Nox had hit him with his magic earlier.
I suppose a bit of both, really. And perhaps I owe you a compliment, too. Between the two of you, I've never heard your kind speak so much like normal human beings. Congratulations on your relative literacy.
At first, the ruin rat scowled a little, but it morphed into a slight smile.
Name?
Carmichael. I don't use my first name.
The ruin rat nodded in apparent approval.
Definitely a bang-up. English origin.
He seemed to like that idea. Of course he would. If he was prejudiced against the Irish and immigrants in general, like all the rest of his gang, then he would only be accepting of English heritage. Carmichael would have to try to stick close to his roots and avoid using foreign slang. The gang member pointed his thumb at himself.
Snap. Don't use either of my given names, but also English.
I'd like my book now, please.
Carmichael held out his hand for it. Snap retrieved it from his pocket, but didn't return it. Instead, he examined the cover, then opened it and flipped through the first few pages.
Book of Blessings?
He looked up at Carmichael.
Stole it off a rector?
What a perfect excuse. Thank you, nasty little man. I did.
You a good pickpocket? Or a restless murderer?
I suppose a bit of both, really.
A generous chuckle accompanied Snap's bigger smile this time, revealing a missing canine tooth.
I take it you're the same?
Carmichael maintained the somewhat chummy feel the conversation had taken, but also kept his nose in the air. This was a game of careful balance, but Carmichael aimed for eventual dominance too.
More of a reckless murderer.
He took off his tall hat and threw it onto a barrel behind him. His brown hair had been styled relatively flat, with a side part and some hair pulled forward at the front into a rounded shape at the top of his forehead, very much in style now. It looked like it hadn't been washed for some time, though. If a bathhouse really was the Ruin Rats' headquarters, the irony was incredible.
Oh, so you were about to kill me in the alley when your comrade stopped you, hmm?
Guess he was right to keep you alive, seeing as it turns out we're cut from similar cloth.
Indeed. Only mine is royal blue, and yours seems to be filthy grey.
Carmichael prodded him. Snap laughed again.
Glad I kept you around after all.
Carmichael bowed deeply, exaggerating his well-heeled manners.
Thank you.
His upper body now closer to the book, he reached out and yanked it back, then stood straight again. Snap's face collapsed into anger quickly, but Carmichael held up his index finger.
I don't plan to use it against you. I only want to be the one to present it to whoever leads your pack. You understand, of course.
He pocketed it quickly.
Good way to get your hand lopped off.
It would be your pleasure, I'm sure.
Snap's smile was reserved this time.
One step out of line, and it will be.
He drew closer to Carmichael, his brown eyes unblinking, intense, and his smile dropped completely.
We may both be English, but I don't know you yet. Push me too hard, and your blood will mix with dirt faster than your royal blue can react. Don't forget who you're dealing with. We're not in the streets, and no one's going to help you. When I say you're dead,
He slowly drew his thumb across his throat.
it's over for you.
Carmichael searched his eyes for ego, for arrogance or cockiness, but all he found was sincerity.
That's no bluff. I've got to tread carefully, or I won't survive long enough to make this risk worth anything.
And that's it. That's it. Thank you so much for reading that. It's always so much fun to hear your work come to life. It was great.
Thanks, everyone.
Look at all that. That's great.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
great.
It's a good thing my hair's short.
Yeah. Hillary thing. A special Agatha Christie read, maybe. Oh. That's great.
It's all in the little grey cells.
And Caroline was speechless. Oh, that was great. That was a good read.
I'm not surprised with the way you keep stealing her wigs.
I stole her sideburns too.
That was perfect.
So, Christy, where can people buy your stuff, especially that book we just read from?
So that one is right now. Thanks, Anita. That one is on Patreon, which you can get to at patreon.com/ChristyStratus. It's just $1 a month, or you can pay what you wish. And you get those weekly episodes sooner than you do on Kindle Vella. Kindle Vella is also once a week, but it's a few days later, so it's delayed. That's where you can find them right now. I am going to be publishing that series in paperback and in Kindle. But for now, it's just on Patreon and on Kindle Vella. So you can also find the rest of my books, which are historical suspense, short stories, and novels on my website. You can buy directly from me. I will sign it and gift wrap it and everything. It's a really special, fun experience. And that's just ChristyStratus.com. You can see the spelling of my name here. Or you can go to Amazon. You can go to Kobo. You can go to Google. I think it's Google Books, iBooks, definitely. Barnes & Noble. There are a lot of places my books are available. So you can check all those places for any of my reads.
Awesome. www.ChristyStratus. I'm going to spell your name wrong. So thank you for coming on, Paige. Paige asked me before we started here how long we're going. Unfortunately for Paige, she's still in school, and I guess she still gets homework. You got homework to do tonight?
We're actually all good. I got no homework, so
awesome.
I have no
see?
time limit. Yeah, we're all
I
good.
think for Legends Day is a holiday.
That's right.
There you go, yeah.
In Bracebridge, all the schools are closed today.
See, it's for us.
for Paige Taylor's reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
exactly
had to write
right.
it for you. So sorry, Christy, it's www.christystratos.com, right?
Yeah, that's right.
There we go. Awesome.
Thank you.
So if anyone else wants to chime in with questions, I guess we can take a couple more questions before we go. We're not quite sure what's going on next month, but we will keep everyone informed when we figure out what's happening. And I'm sure it'll be another live read. We'll have a lot of fun. So stay tuned for that so you can catch it. And I will be posting it on all of my regular outlets. I posted in a couple book groups. There's a great big book group called the Book Lounge. I posted in there, and most of those people are from the U.S. around the world. So sometimes we get people tuning in, or they watch it a little bit later. So that's nice. And as far as the video page, Caroline will copy the video for you tomorrow, and probably or the next day, and she'll send it off to you, and you can do what you want at that point. Yeah. So
Perfect. Thank you.
No, thank you for joining us. That was great. It was nice to share your work with you. It's so exciting being a new author. I don't think it ever gets old holding your book in your hand. So
it does not.
No. That first one's probably just a bit more special than the rest, but every time you get one, it's special.
Sorry, Richard.
Sure.
No, go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say, it's funny you mentioned earlier, Richard, how the fourth book was like really difficult. And it's like when I did the fourth Joe Ballon book, that was incredibly difficult. It's like trying to come up with more Ballonisms.
Yeah.
After I'd done 3 complete novels full of like cynical, snide, humorous comments, it was like, oh my God. It was like, how can I come up with any more? It really took a lot of work.
Oh, for sure. Like I've got a goblin high wizard that I introduced in the first book, and he was easy to write about because he was something new and he had his own personality, and I was developing his personality. But after 4 books that they're 600 to 700 pages long, he can only be snarky so long, and all of a sudden it just it's not as impactful anymore. He can only call his apprentice a buffoon so many times before writing that, and the reader's probably bored stiff reading it. So it's it's very difficult to keep the flow going through 4 books and trying to keep because we're trying to keep the reader engaged. And as much as I like to drive in Alphen's character, the goblin, but everyone knows his character by now, so you run out of things to write about your characters.
Yeah, my editor was saying, I'm sure Joe Ballon said that like in one of the other books. It's like, he did? Oh, damn, now we're going to come up with something else.
That could be hard to remember. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I guess I've always said your readers are smarter than you are when it comes to your book. So
right. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They know your books better than you do. It takes them a day sometimes to read your book, whereas it's taking you a year or more to write it.
That's so true. Very
35 years for me to write my first book. So you can just imagine all the stuff I forgot, all the little details, but your reader will not forget it. So they'll call you out on it. So yeah, that's the joy of being an author for sure. Oh, thanks, Caroline.
Oh, great.
Thanks, Caroline.
No, I'm bad. I'm just I'm not the one who looks after. Well, I'm the one who looks after the text now, which I used to not be the one who looked after the text, and it was so easy relying on Dave or Christy to do that because you guys did it so well. I'm horrible at it, so I appreciate.
We can't do that anymore. But anyway,
what's that?
Unfortunately, we can't do that anymore.
Yeah, no. Anyway, I think we'll let you go, Paige, and thank you for joining us again tonight.
Yep.
And
thank you.
Thank everyone for joining us. And it was a great read, and we had lots of viewership today. It was really good. So I think you're already building a crowd. You're building a fan base already, Paige, and that's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it. I really did. So
you're welcome. It's our pleasure. So if you guys have nothing else to say, I will sign us out of here.
I think we're good.
All right.
Yeah.
So again, thank you everyone for joining us on Lurking for Legends. Until we meet again, take good care.
Bye.
Thank you.